The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report with Dom and Charles. Now, Charles is off, in the Daintree or somewhere, and he's missed the biggest political story of our times, the death of a dictator. Australia's first and let's hope last dictator, Dictator Dan. I'm only assuming he's died because why else would a dictator leave office at 5 p.m? Was it the photo with the ciggy that did it? Was it Victorians spontaneously rising up against his oppressive regime? Was it the brilliance of the Victorian Liberal Party? What is it that did him in? Perhaps there was another set of stairs that's to blame for this. The one man who can explain it all for us is Sami Shah. Sami, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm here reporting live from the streets of Melbourne, where, yes, you are right, we have seen the fall of a dictator. It has been a violent and tumultuous time. Rebel groups encircled the Parliament House, and dictator Daniel Andrews was chased out into the streets, where he was then killed, much in the way Gaddafi was killed, with a shotgun up his ass, it turns out. I think that's how they killed Gaddafi. I don't know, it turns out the dictator steps down sometimes. Sometimes dictators retire. What are you going to do?
We'll find out after this. But this was quite the bombshell, wasn't it? I don't live in Victoria. Let's be honest, I try to avoid news from Victoria, lest I be tempted to move to Melbourne on a permanent basis. But we've rushed into the podcast studio to try and make some sense of this news and where Victoria goes from here. Everything I've read about Dan Andrews, Sammy, tells me that he was a terrible premier who basically ground the population into the dust. They hated him, and there should be singing and carolling in the streets of Melbourne all night. It should be another white night, really, in Melbourne, shouldn't it? Is that what we're expecting?
Yeah, absolutely. Victorians overall hated Daniel Andrews so much that in the last election they returned him to office as premier with a landslide victory, the likes of which hadn't been seen since his previous victory and the victory before that. So, as you can see, we in Victoria, we express our love through lots of votes and enthusiasm. Look, here's the thing. I didn't anticipate this. No one anticipated this. In fact, it led to an argument between myself and my partner because I was on my phone, and she said, "You're always on your phone. You need to get off your phone and be present in the moment. Sometimes you do have a baby you should be focusing on." I said, yes, fine. I put my phone down. After 15 minutes, I couldn't help myself. I picked my phone up, and Daniel Andrews had resigned. And she was about to start lecturing me again.
There's a lesson.
And I said, look what happens when I put the phone down. Next time, I'm not putting the phone down. And she was like, yeah, you're right. We should always be on the phones all the time. Let's neglect the children. So yeah, he resigned. He's suddenly announced a shock resignation starting tomorrow at 5 p.m. I don't know when people will be listening to this. It might be today at 5 p.m. or might be yesterday at 5 p.m. depending on when you hear this podcast episode.
Well, it's 24 hours now. We should say we're just kicking off the final 24 hours of the Andrews regime. So I'm imagining that the shredders are going to be running over time. There'll be killings in the street. But basically all the things that a dictator does before they leave on a plane for
Absolutely.
a friendly regime. Where's he going, do you think? Where
all dictators retire these days. Dubai, probably, I'm assuming.
Dubai.
He's going to end up in Dubai. But yeah, most dictators, when they leave, they make sure that anyone who spoke badly about them pays. And so I'm anticipating, gutters red with blood, as you say. And I know for a fact that Peter Credlin, Andrew Bolt, all of them are being rounded up as we speak by gangs to be sent to the gulags. Which would be easy to do because they're probably completely drunk right now in celebration. I don't anticipate anyone sober in Sky News headquarters.
Well, let's point to that, Tammy, because if there's one group that's been consistently opposed to the Andrews regime, it's been pointing out it's had the bravery to call out, the sort of boot heel that he's ground into the face of Victorians for so long. It has been the Herald Sun and it has been Sky News. And look, our sister site, The Shot's written a lot about their efforts covering Dan Andrews. I'm sure the editor, Dave Milner, often called by Charles the voice of Melbourne, by the way. He's putting together a piece on the Andrews regime. It's their advocacy, isn't it, that's twisted Victorians' minds, or perhaps just Dan Andrews' mind. Maybe he read one Herald Sun editorial too many and decided that, look, If I'm not appreciated, I'm going to go somewhere where they like this kind of thing, as you say, possibly Dubai or Saudi Arabia.
Well, I mean, why not? That's what they did to Mark McGowan in WA, right? It was basically the top-notch reportage by WA Today and all the other News Corp outlets that basically highlighted what a brutal dictator he was and how he completely botched the COVID lockdowns for WA, which resulted in most of WA living a fairly COVID-free existence while the rest of the country was in lockdown. That forced Mark McGowan out of his job, and not obviously the promise of a really high-paid position in a mining industry. Here's the weird thing, is there's yet never been any follow-up on that. There seems to be a spate of now, well, two becomes a spate, of Labour premiers suddenly retiring mid-premiership because they want to spend more time with their families. And if there's one thing we know, politicians don't spend time with their families.
No,
in fact, the families are
the
probably
whole point
grateful for
of getting
that.
into politics.
Yeah, exactly.
No, Sammy, I had to correct you, but it's 3 because the person who started this trend was Jacinda Ardern of the Sudden Smoke Bomb.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's really, it comes back to her. She kind of made it seem cool and then swung around the world getting various accolades. I think she went on Stephen Colbert yet again. She made it look like it was possible to walk away at the time of your choosing.
Is this the quiet resignation thing we keep hearing about? The big resignation that,
The quiet quit.
Yeah, I think maybe this is what it is. It's a little louder than quiet, but maybe that's what's motivating everyone. Is at some point you reach a certain age and you go, what am I doing with my life? And is it really worth it just to be the focus of so much ire from the Liberal Party? But it's actually interesting to see some of the coverage right now. I went on. Of course, The Age has some fairly balanced articles. There's some columns, detailing his achievements and then his failures, and there are both. I'm not exactly a Dan Andrews fanatic myself. If he was a dictator, there are times when I would have been shot in the streets, and the other times I would have been celebrated as one of his big supporters. But if you go over to The Australian, the descriptions are a little less charitable. If you, I think they describe one of his big achievements as he made euthanasia, which started in Victoria under Andrews, spread like a fire around the country. So I don't know if you know about this, but according to The Australian, everyone's just being euthanized now.
Andrew Denton campaigned for that. He just wants the mass killing, and perhaps that's why Andrews, a bit like the guillotine destroying the leaders of the French Revolution. Perhaps he stepped away before he could be subjected to euthanasia.
Yeah, and then Victorian opposition leader John Pesutto has said that Daniel Andrews trashed Victoria's reputation. And John Pesutto should know about that because he trashed his party's reputation. So he's good. He knows about trashing.
So no need to be charitable on the way out the door. I
No,
guess.
not at all.
Has anyone sought comment from the stairs? I did see someone on the platform formerly known as Twitter posting that they were right next to where the stairs were if anyone wanted to reach them for comment. But I mean, really, the only force in the past 9 years in Victoria that's managed to stop Dan Andrews is a very, very short staircase of 2 to 3 stairs.
Well, it's funny you say that because on news.com.au, they've got outgoing Victorian Premier Dan Andrews' biggest controversies revealed, right? And the controversies are, and I'm listing them over here, by order of appearance on the website, which I'm trying to navigate, but I can't because the ad keeps popping up every time I try going there.
Great site.
That's what journalism is now. All right, so it says Commonwealth Games controversy. Fair enough. He did promise to bring the Commonwealth Games here in the last election. Then shortly after winning the election, he announced that we're not doing them anymore, which is not a good look. COVID quarantine. I don't know if it's controversy. Most people think he did the right thing. But anyway, branch stacking allegations. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Red shirt scandal. Absolutely. And then broken back. And that's his controversy. It says, in March 2021, Dan Andrews broke his back after falling on the wet stairs in Sorrento on the state's Mornington Peninsula. Premier spent 111 days recovering from his injuries, which included broken ribs and spinal damage, but faced criticism upon his return. The incident drew attention to allegations out of the state of the Victorian health sector, as well flaming conspiracy theories about the incident. There's a lot of typos in this because whatever AI chatbot news.com.au is using to write this hasn't proofread their own work yet.
The Chaser Report. News you can't trust.
Let's have a listen to Daniel Andrews' own words and see if we can pass anything from them. This is from SBS News.
Can I say to you that the moment you're not comfortable with that choice, doing this job as a defining feature, your entire life pretty much, the moment you're not comfortable with that decision for you and the people that you love, then you have to step away. because you never want to get to a place where you resent this job, this amazing privilege and important opportunity. That would not be right, and I simply won't allow that to happen.
Gosh, doesn't he sound scared, Sammy? Scared
Absolutely.
of the tribunal that's coming.
Exactly the same speech that Salvador Allende gave just before General Pinochet stormed the halls of that presidential palace and killed him. So clearly
Yes,
he
that's
knew that Lachlan Murdoch
He
was
knew.
coming from him.
Oh, of course. Well, that's the thing. I mean, Lachlan Murdoch, in the same week, these two shock resignations. I mean, the Herald Sun won't know what to do, the roller coaster of this week. But I mean, it's very similar to the Ardern speech, saying when you don't have the fire in your belly anymore, you've just got to give the game away. So not much there. Sammy, I wonder about the Siggy pick. A couple of days ago, maybe he went, look, can't a man just enjoy a Siggy in peace? Or maybe it is that Daniel Andrews has so destroyed Victoria that the wokeism is so rife that he felt that he just couldn't cope with the judgment of Victorians for having a ciggy, because you can't do that kind of thing in Victoria.
Or
can you?
he felt like he's done his job. He's made us such a woke capital of the world where everyone is now trans, they, them, and it's mandatory to vote yes, otherwise you'll be shot on the streets. That I mean, that's the way it's being described in other parts of the media. That he feels like job's done, can't top this, and it's time to retire. I do feel bad though, of course, for Jacinta Allen because she's now being touted as his replacement, and given the debt we're in, it does feel kind of like the Vanessa Hudson position appointed as Qantas CEO is very much a perching on the glass cliff kind of job, I think, at this point.
Well, how's the polling going? I mean, this is the thing. He's far away from having to face the judgment of the voters who apparently despise him so much. And as you say, Sammy, have expressed that through re-electing him. I'm keen to get the numbers from you in just a moment. So have the polls been showing that Andrews is done? Is he walking away before the people of Victoria come for him with hatchets?
I think the problem for the people of Victoria has been, even if they come for him with hatchets, there's no one to hand those hatchets to, because the Liberal Party, the opposition party of Victoria, is non-existent. I just mentioned the leader of the Victorian Liberals' name. I want to see if you remember it.
I do, but only because
The full name.
I looked at the age. John Pasuto. I know that
that's
only
right.
because
Okay.
I looked.
All right.
This is literally a 5-minute memory, because I was just thinking at the start of this conversation that I should really look up what the Victorian opposition leader had said, and then I could not for the life of me remember their name.
There we go. I live in
And I just went to
Victoria.
the Age website. Yep. The Age website
Yeah,
had
and I
it.
couldn't remember
had
it.
Pasuto says he's trashed Victoria. I was like, I'm thinking Pasuto's probably our man here.
Yeah.
The man who's just thinking, this is my moment at last. The one thing I haven't been able to do myself. Time or fate or boredom or the honest desire of a man to have a ciggy in peace has done. It's removed Andrews as his opponent. See, Labor does historically go to a woman when they've had an incumbent go for a long time, but they usually only do it when they're going to lose the next election. Christina Keneally, Carmen Lawrence, Joan Kerner, I think, in Victoria. There are some examples in Queensland too. Anna Bligh, I think. So, or did Anna Bligh? No, I think Anna Bligh might have been the first to win, actually, in that situation. But yeah, it's interesting to see whether she'll be able to keep the Dan brand alive, because sometimes, Sammy, it did seem as though it was the man, not the party, that was really running Victoria, that no one really cared about anyone else below the top job.
I mean, look, they are okay, and to be put jokes aside for a second, I do think that it had become a dangerously so a party of personality. I'm not a fan of. I think the Liberal Party is to blame for having such a terrible opposition, and not being able to thus keep, for example, Labour to account, because there were many failures. I don't count COVID as a failure. I think what they did at the time with the extensive lockdowns was a decision made with the best information they could have at the time. In retrospect, you might be able to criticize it, but I do think it was the right choice at the right time. But there are a lot of failures, and I think if we had a competent opposition, we might have been able to keep those failures limited to a degree. But because it was a personality politics at the end of the day, and it became Dan's state, you couldn't really push back on too many things, and there are things that needed pushing back on. Overall, though, it is funny to kind of see some of the articles that have been coming out, because the way they paint them, and these are articles being written by journalists in Victoria even, but they're so completely out of touch with the average Victorian, because the average Victorian doesn't see COVID lockdowns as a massive controversial mistake that he made. It's mostly just, a few right-wing journalists or opinion columnists who see it that way. And I think overall, despite his failures, he's being counted more for the successes than the failures, and as an overall failure. And I think that might be why he resigned resigned because he was still on top, and the only way from there is down, which is very similar to probably why Mark McGowan resigned.
It is rare. It's become trendy, as we've said, but before this, there weren't many examples. Bob Carr left, bang on 10 years. Mike Baird, Liberal Premier, left New South Wales, bang on, I think, getting a good job offer from the NAB. He wasn't there for very long. And I'm just looking at his Twitter/X feed here. Let me float a conspiracy theory that might explain it. There's a video this morning posted, the last one he posted before the one saying, thank you, Victoria, basically. He didn't actually tweet that he was leaving. He just tweeted, see ya. And there's actually a picture of him turning his back. He's turning his back on Victorian voters, Sammy.
Well, he can now. It's not, he's just a civilian.
Yeah. And his back's fixed. I'll tell you what it says. It says Victorian-made trains in a Victorian-made tunnel. It doesn't get better than that. And there's a video of him going on the new, the Metro link going through that tunnel that's been so controversial. What I'm imagining, Sammy, is that the train broke down and it's been suppressed. And that, in fact, the train, it says welcome to Metro. It looks as though it works. It's CGI, Sammy. There's no tunnel and there's no train. All will be revealed in a few weeks' time. And someone goes down to have a look. And by then, Dan Andrews will be off in Dubai with his feet up, the Burj Al Arab or something like that, laughing at the suckers who voted for him 600 times over the past 9 years.
I mean, I will quibble with one thing that he said, where he said it doesn't get better than this Victorian-made trains with a Victorian-made tunnel. And I think an airport link would be significantly better than that, because that is the one thing, again and again, I cannot believe that Melbourne doesn't have, and we have yet to have a Premier deliver. And if maybe the Liberals promise that, they might have better luck. But look, I'm from a country where the last dictator only left after we had a nationwide protests and the war on terror, and America basically had to force him out, and then he moved to Dubai where he died. And before that, we blew one up in a plane with the crate of mangoes. So,
which is an amazingly stylish way to do it, by the way.
That's what I feel like. This is such
that,
a disappointing.
A case of exploding mangoes. I read that book.
Yeah, by Muhammad Hanif. It's a great book. And but yeah, I feel like overall, this is a bit of a disappointment. It's a shock thing, but you want some beheadings or something to happen as he leaves. He takes out his enemies. Night of the Long Knives or something.
Sammy, he has 24 hours to make the streets of Melbourne, to make Swanston Street run red with the blood of everyone at Herald Sun headquarters. Let's see what he does. Sammy, thank you for joining us. We'll catch you on News Weekly. You'll probably have a wrap of this at the end of the week.
Oh, I'm very grateful to him for giving me something to start the week, the top stories of the week off with, because otherwise I always struggle. I'm like, what's interesting? Thank you. It was going to be this or Justin Trudeau having a Nazi in Parliament. So yeah. Nobody
even wants to hear sort of depressed jokes about The Voice at this point.
No.
So there you go. Our gear is from Road, part of our Iconoclast network, and we'll catch you next time in a freer Victoria. Goodbye, Dictator Dan.
Bye.